Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to another Scouser Tommies, another one in the middle of the World Cup that's interrupted our proper season, but not long to go now. We can get back to some real footy, but it drags on, as World Cups do, at least as they feel like they do at this time of year, but it'll soon be over. I'm Jim Boardman and I'm with Jay Reid, and we'll talk a little bit about recent World Cup stuff as it appears, as it sort of relates to the Reds, and maybe a little bit about what's going on with the Reds, because obviously, as we're sort of in a sort of pre-season, our players have had to go out and play games in Dubai, or let's say had to. That's where they've ended up. Bit of sort of warming up again, a bit of a rest maybe, then get back to training, get back to pre-season, get some minutes in. But it's not been a great sort of, whatever you want to call it, mid-season thing for Liverpool, has it, with the loss of Diaz? And if you care about friendlies, it wasn't the best of results either, was it?
No, I was planning on maybe getting half fit in, but given the current weather conditions, dog walks take a lot longer on ice, I've discovered in the last few days, than they do on regular concrete or woodland where we normally go. So I kind of missed that one yesterday, and judging by the results, it might have been a blessing in disguise. I don't know. I just hoped we wouldn't get any more injuries, but I think Harvey Elliott went off. I don't know what he's picked up or the extent of it. And, just our luck, it probably is something serious in a meaningless sort of game in effect. But I suppose it's a mini pre-season as Klopp and the management team are put on it. So as any pre-season would go, you've sort of got to get your match sharpness back in. So, yeah, I kind of weren't sure. I think we both said going into the World Cup, we weren't sure how we'd feel about it. And some games have lured you in and you realise you're watching the games and you sort of lose interest. But as we are now on Monday, prior to the semi-finals, it really all comes to a close. And I was kind of lost last week when there was no 1 o'clock games in the afternoon. Yeah, when I had nothing to do.
Yeah, the background viewing that you normally have, because you're stuck with I don't know, bloody Dickinson's Real Deal or something if you've got the telly on at that time of day, then aren't you?
It was just a bit odd. You kind of stupidly fell into, watching Mexico and South Korea at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because why wouldn't you? But yeah, I think we sort of reached the latter end of this World Cup, and there's been some good games, there's been some okay games. Refereeing performances have been quite comedy if you caught the Netherlands and Argentina game. I said before the match to me, mate, I remember this ref at Anfield. He was a nightmare. He was dead picky, couldn't wait to stop the game. And true enough, 17 yellow cards later and almost mass brawls between the two nations. But
and the trouble is now Michael Oliver's senior role, and he's been over there. He's going to pick up some of these skills himself, isn't he? As if things weren't bad enough.
Well, Taylor was there, and then I think he was rapidly dropped after the group stage. I wonder why. That was. Maybe, because Manchester can't represent themselves as a country, that he can't benefit them in any way.
Could be, yeah, because there's not enough. Not the right. He's not with the right oil people, is he? Maybe in that country.
Yeah, maybe he should have got the Portugal game, and the Man City collegiate might have given him a nudge and a wink towards his way, and Mr. Taylor might have helped him out. But then, of course, we're just speculating that he lives in the Manchester area, and he doesn't support either Manchester club.
No, of course not. I mean, he's totally impartial. I mean, I think doesn't he say he supports Aldringham or something? Which is right, okay. I know someone who supports Aldringham, but they still got sort of a fondness for Manchester United. It's that kind of thing. Like, even if that's your first club, you're still gonna Well, put it this way: you're not going to love Liverpool, are you, when they play Man United if you're from there? So, but anyway, let's leave them to it. You just mentioned Portugal as well, and a player that we were bigging up not too long ago on here because he spoke out about the reception he got from Liverpool fans, away from serious stuff and back to football, and he looked a bit of a div, didn't he? Right at the end, Cristiano Ronaldo. Just they lost. He had not been used for the last couple of games because of alleged rows within the camp. He's not got a club at the moment because of alleged rows within that camp. And then they lose, and instead of staying on the pitch to console the younger players as the captain, he disappeared down the tunnel crying. And he's not the only one.
Classy as always. It was good to see, wasn't it? Like, from a Liverpool perspective, just seeing him like trudge off with his head bowed down and the tears flowing out of his face. And I'm sure there's a couple of other players we might get onto who were, if you're of a Liverpool persuasion, which I'm sure you probably are listening to this podcast, it was nice to see them players upset, just because of where they've got connections to. I think it's the best way to put it. I'm looking at you, Richarlison and Ronaldo, of course, and a couple of England lads, but we'll get it to England shortly. But yeah, it kind of sums him up, like, in the way he's going out, and the debate will rumble on, and Messi, Ronaldo, whoever you prefer. But I just think there's a level of class difference between them, and we did rightly praise Ronaldo for what he said about Liverpool fans, because we showed our level of class, as we always do in situations like that. But I think regardless of when Argentina exit the tournament, whether that be as winners or whether that be as semi-final losers or final losers, then I think you'll just see more of a class act from Messi, and I think that for me is what separates the two people in terms of what they are as people rather than just players. Because we do forget at times that they are people. They're not robots who just play football as much as people like to think they are. We do overlook that, but I think the people aspect of it, there's a stark difference between those two lads.
Yeah, I wondered as well with the tears, like they felt a bit like, I might be being cruel here, but they seemed a bit like Matt Hancock tears, just fake ones.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might be being cruel. I might just be being cruel, but I mean, it is horrible. I mean, I don't care. I mean, we have to kind of stick ourselves in those shoes. If it was a Liverpool game and we got to that stage and we'd gone out in that way, we'd be gutted and stuff. And I can't help imagine that if Mo Salah, say, had been in a Liverpool game and it was a massive game, we'd come back from behind with him scoring a goal, and then from the spot, and then towards the end there was a chance for him to equalise a game from the spot, and if somehow he managed to sky it, I can't imagine him being really happy about it, and he'd feel gutted and he'd feel bad for the team. But if he was the captain that day, I still feel Salah would have gone up on the cameras and spoke to them and sort of apologised to everyone and felt bad about it, but he just stood up and said sorry or whatever, and being a man about it. But England had a penalty situation much like that, and their captain sent someone else out to do the interviews.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Yeah, it was a bit... I don't know. Would coward be the right word to use? I don't know. Like, Harry Kane, had he scored that penalty, you wouldn't have heard the last of it, really, because I think it would have broke Rooney's record. I think he equalled it with the earlier one, and then he would have been went to England's leading scorer, but scorer.
And it may well have been enough to win in the game, because like that could quite so easily have set French heads down, and muddled away through extra time and get onto pens, and then it is like a lottery, isn't it? But
as we've seen, in other games, it genuinely, like, fair play to Croatia in one regard. Like, they know what they want. They want penalties, and they get it. Like, and they take the chance. They play a lot of good football as well throughout the game at times, but they're quite happy to drag teams all the way to penalties. They've done it in several knockout games in recent years, and that's their way of winning. There's more ways to win football than the tiki-taka sort of style of football, as Spain found out to their detriment. But I think the English media won't give Harry Kane the treatment that other players got for missing penalties. That's probably the best way we can say it without delving too much into that and the aspects and reasons probably why. But
and it's wrong, isn't it? Because I can remember when I think it was Carragher and Gerrard missed pens, and they weren't the only ones, I don't think, for England, quite a while ago. And the crap they got for it was bad. But then, and that's almost like is that the anti-Scouse stuff you're thinking. And then you sort of get the last big tournament for England, the fallout from the penalty shootout was disgraceful. And yet, I don't know, this time it was all brave England. What's going on?
Yeah, it was poor old Harry. Like, he's really disappointed he'll bounce back from this. He'll be fine. Or that, like, well, it's because it's Harry Kane, he's England captain, and he represents one of the London clubs. I think, like, there's a lot of things that you can all probably say is maybe it's conspiracy, but the history's there. It matches up, like, in terms of where players are from, the background, who they play for, and whatever, and so on and so forth. But I think it was a little bit classless as well. Again, as we said before with Ronaldo regarding Kane, to not just come out and just, he didn't have to say much. He could have just said, a few words, a minute of his time. And if he's England captain, but then to me that sort of represents the manager as well, because I think he's a bit spineless. It's a bit of a bottle job. We've said it before. Like, we're by no means huge England fans in this part of the country, and it's well documented as the reasons why. But for me, as I would say neutral to French persuasion watching that game, might have a little bit of a wager on France to win it or Argentina. Either way, I'm not too fussed. But looking at it from a neutral point of view, England have just missed a penalty with 6-7 minutes to go. Quite well with these referees in this tournament, you're probably going to get double the amount of time you normally would added on.
I literally predicted 8 minutes to be added on, and that's what it was.
So you're looking at the best chunk of 12 to 15 minutes, give or take, and he doesn't make any changes. Like, no attacking changes. You've got players sat on the bench. Like James Maddison, why he even went? He's just gone on holiday. Like, Jack Grealish, whether you like him or not, he might do something. Like Callum Wilson is a different option up top, and he sat on his hands and wasted. And you think, like, how could you? If you're a genuine England fan, if that was your club manager, if that was Jurgen Klopp in a club situation, you'd be like, why are you leaving, say, for example, Darwin Núñez on the bench and, I don't know, Harvey Elliott or something like that, a creative spark. Why are you leaving him on the bench until the 97th minute and then throwing, Wandem on and saying, go on, do something in the last 2 minutes? You'd be tearing your hair out. Like, I don't know. It's
knockout football as well, and that's the other thing. It's knockout football at this stage. It's not like you're in a group phase and it's like a 1-0 win, and a 1-goal defeat could be better for you than a 2-goal defeat. That could put you through on goal difference or something. I get it, maybe to some extent. Then if you're in that stage, maybe it's more of a risk to concede an extra one than to just stay where you are. Maybe. But in a knockout game, you're either in or you're out. It doesn't matter whether you win 21-20 or 1-0, that team that wins and goes through. Or if it's level at the end, you go on to pens and, if necessary, extra time of pens and so on. So it's knockout. And Liverpool would not have been in the last European Cup final if they'd had that approach, because a certain goalkeeper wouldn't have run up to the other end of the pitch and scored the goal that got you into the top four, would he? So, no. There's no it's not even like a sense of adventure. There's no sense of sort of a slight bit of adventure, a little bit of a risk. Yeah, exactly, because there's rewards with risk, and I get it that, you could be thinking, we've got to be cautious for the first hour, got to be cautious even for the first 75 minutes, maybe to a point. But there comes a point in a game like that where you've got to say, we've got to throw everything at it here because we've got to stay in. And there's one player they could have brought on that they've hardly used. And, you know, considering they've got a centre forward, basically, who's supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread in terms of centre forwards, a player who can get some good crosses in. And they just left him on the bench because apparently he can't defend.
If he can't defend in certain people's opinions and eyes, well, don't play him in a defensive role. Play him in a role more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Like give the tools to the players on the pitch. I just don't get it. And what will be overshadows is obviously the media narrative, which is told by the likes of Gary Neville and the likes of Matterface and Dixon and everyone else who was and all the ITV and BBC, blah blah. Gary Neville, Gary Lineker and Shearer and all that. Like England
Matterface,
well.
Matterface doesn't understand VAR because he thought that there was a time limit on how far you could go back to a foul rather than it being from the same phase of play. There you go.
Yeah, but if that was a different man, if that manager was Antonio Conte and this was Tottenham in this situation in a cup game, he would have been slaughtered. If this was Jurgen Klopp in a European Cup quarter-final, he would have been slaughtered because he didn't use the tools available to him.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's him and he manages the national team, with must have no managerial credentials to be nowhere near that job. Like, I'm sorry, but Sam Allardyce got the job. At least he proved something in football. Like, okay, it might not be to your personal liking, but he's got a track record of success in one area of the game or the other. Gareth Southgate isn't fit to lace anyone's boots, never mind manage England, but he gets away with it because he's a nice guy and he says yes and he'll do this and he won't upset people. And, you know, the likes of Harry Kane will now have all the protection he probably needs or shouldn't be getting anyway because other players weren't afforded that 18 months ago when they missed penalties at a crucial stage in a football match, in a tournament, or representing the country. It's just massive hypocritical media narrative that, you know, if people don't understand why Liverpool fans don't support England, well, that is a massive case of evidence there in terms of, like, why would you want to support that? Why would you want to go to places and get beer lashed all over you as well? Like, I couldn't think of nothing worse than standing in that room in London where they've probably paid through the nose to get in and they're paying not much change out of a £10 note for a pint to get it lashed all over you. No thanks. I'd rather sit on my own couch. And in fact, I'd rather watch Strictly Come Dancing on a Saturday night than watch England anyway.
Yeah, I believe they moved Strictly to Sunday, but
luckily
this year...
My missus weren't happy.
Oh, luckily this year the missus hasn't been interested in Strictly, so I don't know why, but if I don't ask, there's no danger of it coming back in the house again. But yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Football takes over.
Speaking of that, though, I've probably rubbed off too much on mine and corrupted it because she was like, I'd love Kane to score here. And I'd give her a look and she went, just so they could get knocked out in extra time. Wouldn't it just be even sweeter? And I was like, I've educated you well, haven't I?
Yeah.
You spend far too much time watching football with me, especially the international games, because it was like, for a moment, I was like, because she's not from Liverpool, I was like, okay, so I know your family are proper England fans. She'd be like, I'd love Kane to score here. And I was like, just so they could, you know, feel the pain in extra time or penalties, because that would just be nice. It's like, oh yes.
I think that's it. If everyone just takes out, everyone's sort of dazzled by the sort of the hype and the media sort of spin towards England all the time. If they just sort of step aside from it a minute, they'll see it's the same old thing. I'm just surprised, to be honest, that they've not started calling Southgate some kind of vegetable yet. But maybe they're thinking they can get another couple of years out of it before they start doing that. I don't know. They're just so sort of, I don't know. They're so strange, the media with England. They all sort of en masse decide to hate them, en masse decide they can do nothing wrong. And I feel sorry for anyone who, and I know there's people who do this, they don't really watch the game, they don't really watch football, they're not into it. But then a World Cup or a Euros comes round and they'll get into it. I'm a bit like that with the Olympics. I mean, I'm not someone who watches curling week by week, but when it's on the Olympics, there's nothing else on, I might watch a bit. And the sort of brushing up on ice thing. But people who watch football, and the only time you watch it is watching a World Cup, and then maybe the only time you really watch it is watching England. I feel sorry for them, because that's not an advert for the game. So I feel sorry for them. But maybe we can move this away from the World Cup, but without moving it away from the World Cup, because we said before the World Cup began that we'd spend some time trying to put a team together each of Liverpool players that have played in a World Cup ever, sort of best 11. And it was your idea, wasn't it?
It was, and I'm still struggling to find a left back because in my days of watching Liverpool, if we just scanned quickly through the left back repertoire, you're talking Stigginga, Bjornaby,
Wow.
John Anarisa,
Lovely.
Gregory Vignal.
Cool.
Who else have we got? Andrea De Sena for his troubles. Andy Robertson more recently. And I'm probably missing someone else because I'm not mentioning Paul Konchesky. And a lot of these players have not represented the countries at World Cups. So I've got 10 players, but I have no left back. Therefore, I might have to be a little bit sneaky and maybe slot in a player who has probably played there in his time, because the one player I did want was Alvaro Arbeloa, and his time at Liverpool didn't coincide with when he was actually at the World Cup. That's the stipulations I've gone with. So they've had to represent Liverpool at the World Cup.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
While they were under contract, then Arbeloa was my guy, and unfortunately he weren't at Liverpool at the time, unless I'm getting my facts and years mixed up, but it doesn't seem to connect the dots. I think it was the Euros he was at when he was at us.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of remember, isn't it, as well, because you get players who weren't quite in favour, or maybe got an injury and didn't go, like Jota didn't play in this World Cup, for instance, but you'd have expected him to have made a huge difference to them if he'd have gone, but never mind. Yeah, so I'm lucky because I'm old and I can remember older players, but the thing is, back in those days, Liverpool players were almost always English, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, and in those days, England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales didn't really always go to World Cups, you know. I mean, England won it in 1966, which you might have heard if you live in this country. You might have heard that mentioned once off 5,000 times every time the World Cup comes around. But yeah, the home nation, so to speak, and Ireland didn't always get to World Cup. So a lot of Liverpool players missed out. And we did a pod with Tony Evans the other day, and we just mentioned in passing in there about the great Neville Southall, one of the best goalkeepers around back in the 80s, and he was Everton's keeper. And him and Ian Rush were maybe, at each end of the pitch. Merseyside's had the best sort of players of their type at each end of the pitch, us with Rush, them with Southall, and neither of them played in a World Cup because they were Welsh, and Wales weren't getting into World Cups at the time. So there's a lot of good players that we can't pick because they never made it. And I mean, I can start with mine just in case this gives you a chance to think of a left back. And I started off myself thinking, maybe I won't count this World Cup. Maybe I'll just go back and count older World Cups or something as a little rule of my own. But then I started thinking, who the hell is going to go in goal? And if I go back, my first keeper, the first Liverpool keeper I remember was Ray Clements. He didn't play in a World Cup. He was in a squad once, but didn't play because some clever England manager at the time, they've had a good track record of clever England managers, decided Shilton was better, so Clem didn't play. And after that, we had Brucey, who didn't play in a World Cup. Then you start moving forward. We've had other players. David James played in a World Cup. I'm not sure if I'd have put him in my team, and he wasn't a Liverpool player when he did. And then you end up with Simon Mignolet. Before you know it, you're on Simon Mignolet, and you think, well, do I really want to put him in? And luckily, he didn't actually play in a World Cup. He was just in a squad. So I've had to go with the obvious one. I've had to go with this man we have now, Alisson Becker. I can't think of anyone else to stick in goal, and to be honest, he counts. He's in there in the rules, and I think in all honesty, naming all those Liverpool goalkeepers from the past, he's definitely up there. He's definitely the joint best, if not the best. And I think, really, overall, he probably is the best. And I know some people will disagree, but I just think something about him, the stuff he's done. Oh, another player I just missed out then, actually, was Pepe Reina, who almost won the World Cup for Spain, didn't he? But he didn't actually play. He was just like, he was the cheerleader. There was so many great videos of him back in the day, but he never played, did he?
No, I don't know if he got in the pitch in any game at all, but yeah, he did win. He won the World Cup with Spain because he was there. But yeah, we'll go through like position by position each and say who we've got or whatever. But yeah, mine was Alisson, and I think if anyone's watched this World Cup with any interest, like Brazil didn't really concede any shots in the first few games on target at all, so we had nothing to do. But then in the times that he did have stuff to do, there was one game, I don't know if it was Croatia or the game they played before that, and he pulled off numerous saves. I think it was South Korea, one from about 30 yards out, full stretch, tipped over the bar, shot basically. He was spread out like a starfish and strong hand and made a few saves there, but he is head and shoulders the best goalie for Brazil. Like, he put Ederson in, and okay, Ederson might be a bit better with his feet, but the business is keeping balls out the net. And Alisson, for me, unless you are of a biased Man City persuasion, is by far and away the best goalie in the league, and arguably probably the best in the world, because I can't really think of anyone else who rivals him in this day and age. Like, probably debate for maybe Oblak at some point or Neuer, but I don't really think there's anyone who can hold a candle to him, because that man is different class. I've never seen a keeper like him.
I think there's something about the personality of keepers as well. Everyone says like keepers have their own sort of mad personality, and I've seen plenty of keepers who that definitely applies to down the years. And just mentioned Pepe Reina being the cheerleader for the Spain side and what a difference he would have made in the dressing room. And Ali gives you that as well. He's a proper leader, isn't he? He looks after that back four. We go on about Big Virgil and the stuff he does for us in the back four, but Ali is also a massive calming influence in there. And I know he has these little moments and things where maybe he makes a mistake, but he's making a mistake because he's trying to be positive and he's trying to get things going and trying to get things moving quickly. He's not a negative kind of player, and I think he's been the difference between us winning things and not winning things so many times that, and again, I said it the other day on a podcast, I've said it in the past, people underestimate the importance of a good keeper sometimes, because all the targets on the great midfielder who sets up puts the ball through to the great striker who scores the great goal, but that keeper is vital, and we've got a great one. So yeah, I agree. I think as I've just said, there's not many to choose from. They've actually played in a World Cup, so even then, he's still one of the best keepers ever to play in a World Cup for anyone. So he gets it. Did you go with the back four then? I assume you did.
I went. Yeah, I've gone for the back four. A 3-man midfield and a 3-man attack, but just as it has been, with your eyes are drawn towards the attack, so I've had to sort of pick three players from about 12.
Yeah.
But yeah, I struggled with the back four in terms of representation of players. So I started obviously the right back, and we've already mentioned him because he only got a fleeting appearance at this World Cup, and it was Trent.
Yeah.
The only one really I could, going back through the years, I could sort of find really in the time I've watched was Glenn Johnson, and let's be honest, Glenn Johnson, again, just Glenn Johnson really. So of course
there was a good Glenn Johnson, if it was the good Glenn Johnson, but even the good Glenn Johnson isn't a bad Trent, I'm afraid. No,
but the Glenn Johnson would have probably played in this England team under this manager, because he done certain things that this manager would like probably not venture too far forward and have a little bit of pace, and try and remain sort of disciplined in your positional play. But,
and big and bulky enough just to sort of be a bit of a bully at corners and that kind of thing, because I think that's what he wants as well.
He would have fitted the managers that really liked him. are your typical old school English managers, your likes of Harry Redknapp, your likes of Roy Hodgson, who loved a solid right back. But in this day and age, like, Trent has revolutionised that right back position. So, if we're going to be honest here, it was a one man show for that position for me.
It was for me in the end as well. I mean, I did have another candidate, and he was close, I think, but I went with Trent, and that was Phil Neal, who was a brilliant full-back for Liverpool, a brilliant right-back for Liverpool for years. He took our pens all the time. He scored loads of pens. He was just, like, brilliant from the spot. So he would have been ideal for England these days, wouldn't he? Because, they're a bit ropey on pens. But as good as he was, it was difficult to choose, but I just went for Trent because the thing I like about Liverpool is positivity and winning games and going forward. And when you've got a defender who wins games by what he does going forward, then you want him in your team. So that's why I went with Trent, same as yourself, really. It's other than that, there isn't loads of competition, even going back a long way. Rob Jones would have been a great right back for England, but sadly, injury got in the way, and Gary Neville got a career with England. So, that's the kind of thing that, as you say, you go through more right backs after that. But to me, those two, Phil Neal and Trent, head and shoulders above anybody else to play in that position. Did you get a left back in the end?
Only by sort of default, and I've had to lump in Jamie Carragher.
Okay, well, that's kind of, yeah, because he was playing left back, I think, when Rafa came to the club.
Yeah, so, and that it's not. I'm not shunting someone out there who's never really played there. As I say, I did 1 hour below it, but the timelines didn't really match up, and as I've mentioned, like there was not really anyone else to go through unless you now spark a light in my mind that I've completely missed someone really obvious.
I was just thinking about Arbeloa and Carragher. Remember that time they had that big set two in a game like near the end? I can't even remember. It was like, really, Carragher really laid into him on the pitch. I think he said afterwards it's because he wanted the Golden Gloves or something, but I think he just lost it. It was fine. Carragher does that every so often, doesn't he? Mine, again, my choice for left back, people would probably remember him better playing at right back or right midfield or central defence sometimes, or central midfield, because he played just about everywhere. Steve Nicol, he was a really important part of the Liverpool team in the 80s, and his versatility was one of the reasons he was important. So, he could be the best at his position wherever he played, basically. And I think that was the only one I could find, really. And like yourself, Carragher would have done, but it was difficult to find a left back that's been involved in the World Cup. I can remember on Twitter once I tweeted something about how good Andy Robertson was and said, he's the best left back we've had since when? And I kind of was thinking back to the likes of Jim Beglin and players like that. So going back a long time. Next thing you know, John Arne Riis is on my case because someone had alerted him to it, and he was wanting me to say he was sort of better than Robertson, but I just sort of didn't agree. And we moved on. But that's it. We haven't had loads of brilliant left backs, and so no wonder it's hard for us to find one. But yeah, Steve Nicol, size 12 boots, a bit of a legend, Scottish player, and I checked and he did play in a World Cup while he played for us, but I doubt it was a memorable World Cup because Scotland didn't have memorable World Cups back then. That leaves us with centre-backs. So I've decided I don't mind which way round these two play. I just wanted 2 really good centre-backs. So, but who have you got?
This sounds really bad, but I've just gone so obvious, and I'm gone with what I think is France's best centre-back, who's currently not playing at centre-back. And if you watched the England-France game the other night, you probably sat scratching your head thinking, why is that fella who used to play at Leipzig with Ibou Konate starting ahead of Ibou Konate? Because he's an absolute car crash waiting to happen in Upamecano. But yeah, I've gone with Konate and I've gone with Virgil because, well, you don't need to really explain why you pick Virgil van Dijk because we all know what he's done in a Liverpool shirt, and yeah, it speaks for himself. And Konate, for me, is the best French centre-back that they've got because I think Varane is just a little bit past it now. And yeah, I don't rate the other fella. And I weren't putting Lovren in, even though he's still playing in World Cups. And I weren't putting Martin Skrtel in either because as much as he loves to slide tackle, given the referee in this World Cups, he will be sent off probably after about 14 minutes for 2 reckless slide tackles. So Yeah, and I had to move Carragher out. That was my other centre-back option. So
that came in handy.
I've got a back four of Trent, Virgil, Konate and Carragher. So a little bit of a local feel there, like sorting out the flanks. But yeah, I've gone for solidness in the middle of the park.
That's solid. That's solid. And I think I saw the other day that Alisson had Lovren in front of him. And I'm thinking, God, I hope this isn't like really putting him off his game and bringing back all kinds of nightmares for him, about having that sight in front of him in days gone by. And Martin Skrtel, yeah, I mean, it's mad to think that Lovren's played in a World Cup final, isn't it? It's unreal.
And could play in another one.
He could well do.
That close.
Yeah, definitely. Did he take a pen? I'm not sure what he'd be like on pens. Got the feeling that might let him down if they get to him on pens.
If it's anything like, a shot from about 30, 40 yards out when you need a crucial goal in a cup final,
yeah,
I wouldn't be giving him the penalty opportunity because it might actually rival Harry Kane's for how far over the bar it goes.
Yeah, he's the kind of person, like, if someone said there's a bomb in that ball, get it out the stadium, he's the one you go for, isn't it?
Yeah, and the lad next to him, like, I think it's like sort of an unwritten like sort of conspiracy that Lovren was made to look really good next to Virgil van Dijk, but anyone looks good next to Virgil van Dijk because he raises the level of any player. But the lad that he's got next to him for Croatia now, that Vario, who's 20 years of age, is making Lovren look good. Now that says something about this 20-year-old kid. And Leipzig have, as I said, we've mentioned Konate and Upamecano. We took one of them, arguably took the right one on the evidence that we've seen so far in this World Cup. But the lad who they've got there now, he's not going to be sticking around for long, and they're probably going to get more money than what they got out of us and Bayern Munich for those two lads who they let go 2 years ago or 18 months ago now. Yeah,
be interesting, won't it? I mean, yeah, it's weird talking about the likes of Skrtel and Lovren as centre-backs when I look back at some of the amazing centre-backs we've actually had, and that's kind of what made my choices difficult. I mean, straight away, I felt I had to go with Van Dijk because the modern centre-back is Virgil van Dijk. If you were going to kind of build robots to be centre-backs, you'd go and look at Virgil van Dijk and just do another one of him, basically. That's the centre-back you want. But down the years, Liverpool have been blessed with some really good centre-backs, and the likes of, I remember Tommy Smith. I'm not sure if he ever played in a World Cup because being a Scouser, he wasn't necessarily England's favourite centre-back. Phil Thompson, another proper Liverpool legend, played at centre-back. And it was difficult to know who to pick out of the old guard because I decided, I would have Virgil and then I'd have one of the old boys from back in the 80s. But I don't think there's at the time, he was as highly thought of as Virgil van Dijk is today, and that's Alan Hansen. Jockey, you probably only remember him yourself from seeing him on Match of the Day, talking about the games on Match of the Day. You might not even remember him for that. It's been a while since he's been on. But Alan Hansen was an absolutely amazing centre-back for Liverpool. And when we won league after league, and when we won European Cups and so on, he was a massive reason why. He was just a player at the back that just gave you confidence and gave you the rest of your team confidence to try things out because they knew there was someone they could rely on at the back. Much like today, when Van Dijk's on form, it's the same kind of thing. And I'm glad I had that dilemma. I'm glad I didn't have it in real life because I would have hated to have gone to them all and sort of said who was going to leave out, who was going to miss out.
Yeah, and I should say I don't remember Hansen as a player, but speaking to like older generation in the family and stuff, like he's the one player who Van Dijk sort of gets compared to in most conversations. He'll say like, obviously there was Hansen and Lawrenson, wasn't there? Yeah. But they did always say Hansen was the better one because he could play football, and obviously today's game is a lot different to the game back in the 80s, but maybe Hansen was ahead of his time in terms of his ball playing ability. He's probably one of a few players who you could take from that era of football and drop them into the current game, and he wouldn't look too much out of place, judging by the snippets of videos you do see on like the LFC TV channel, and what people have said about him is he was that good he could play now. And I think that says a lot about a player, considering obviously the state of the pitches as well back then compared to the carpets they play on now. Like it's a huge testament to what he was as a player.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was definitely a different game at the time. But if you had sort of a way, sort of, smoothing all that out so that you could make a more sort of equal comparison, then yeah, you wouldn't even need to smooth it out that much for him. Like you say, you would. It wouldn't take much for Alan Hansen to be brought up to now in a time machine, a younger Alan Hansen, and to just, it wouldn't take him long to get up to speed and play the game now. He'd probably be annoyed at how easy people fall over and things like that, but, he'd get used to it in the end, I'm sure. As far as formations go, I started off with a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3, I went to 4-4-2 for a bit, kind of ended up back on 4-3-3, and I'm still not sure what my team is, because 4-4-2 is basically how Liverpool played in the 80s, and that it was just how we played. And at the time, fullbacks were fullbacks, a different world. And I'm thinking, if I'm sticking Trent in my side, and I'm sticking Nicol in, who was as happy to play right midfield as he was right back, same on the left, then, do I need another two wingers, like, a 4-4-2 as such, like that? And so I decided to make it 4-3-3. But I still think the personnel I've got could easily be turned into a 4-4-2. Did you say you had three midfielders?
Yes, but like yourself, I could have a 4-3-3/4-2-3-1 because of the players I've picked, especially in the attacking end of the field, could all play multiple different roles. And I've sort of gone with the midfield base of like attacker, a passer, and then an attacking midfielder. So, they could sort of merge into like, maybe a 10 role or something like that. So, it's a flexible team.
Yeah.
Unlike Southgate.
Well, if it's not written down on his little book of formations and stuff, then it's not going to be played, is it?
If it's not in the FA handout from 1984, then it's not getting in there.
Yes, this is how we play association football. Yes, that's the one. I've seen it. Not really. It doesn't exist, I'm sure. Surely not. It will, won't it? It'll be some secret handbook. It does,
because I've done coaching courses, and there is mindless DVDs and videos.
I've seen some that Roy Hodgson did as well. Before he was Liverpool manager, they turned up on some... They might have been on a UEFA site, actually, but it's the same kind of concept of just... This is the textbook way to do things. This is how football is. You can follow this textbook and do it exactly as it says here, because football isn't a game that evolves, and you aren't playing with players, you're playing with robots. That's the kind of thing you get from it, and yeah, that's Gareth Southgate, isn't it? So, have you who's your sort of, I don't know, have you got a defensive midfielder you'd start with in your midfield?
I have, yeah. So it was between two, and I want to give an honourable mention. In fact, he probably fits into the other departments. So I've gone between two.
Yeah.
And obviously there was one who probably could have done a job for Brazil, which might have actually stopped them being eliminated from the competition. But Tite, being a tit, didn't think Fabinho was worth putting on the pitch. When you're trying to, stay in a game and see it out, a defensive midfielder who is a specialist in that position. Okay, he's not been the best in recent months, but he still knows what to do in that position. Just leave him on the bench, it's fine. Yeah. But however, I've gone for a different type of defensive midfielder, and it's Javier Mascherano. Because
yes, he's on my
just loved him.
Google has just decided to start speaking. Google, next time help me with some players, will you? What we just said about Southgate, that he's dead. He's not attack minded, not got any bravery in him. Brazil a bit maybe too much the other way, and that's why Fab never got on.
Yeah, maybe so. But it baffles you. I mean, international managers seem to be a different breed of manager. I mean, Roberto Martinez is the Belgian manager, and I mean, we haven't even talked about Belgium, but they meekly went out of another international competition, albeit, with the golden generation again falling apart. But it seems to be this weird sort of psyche that international managers have, where they pick the favourites and they're the only ones that'll do for them, even though you've taken along what would be specialists in other roles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fell in love with Javier Mascherano when he came to us, and he went on us long, and it was a shame really that we didn't manage to keep hold of him for longer. But just his all-round ability to just break up play, and yeah, maybe in this modern game, he'd probably get a few more yellow cards than touches on the ball. But he was just someone I loved because he represented what I thought football was. Like, you know, you go in and you win a tackle and you take the ball, you take the man, and you get up and you dust yourself off and you go again. And if you've got muddy shorts and muddy socks, it's a sign of a good game of football.
And he also, but when you say he would have got more yellow cards, the thing I always liked about him was he always knew just how far he could go. Because, you know, you'd expect him to have a load of red cards, but he didn't. You know, he didn't have a load of red cards. He knew the limits. He knew how far he could push things. And, you know, and as you say, I mean, the football in my day, in my day, I sound like an old man. When I was watching it as a younger person, there was always a footballer on that pitch who let the other side know he was there. There was a Steve McMahon, there was a Graham Souness, there was someone like that. And I've just given away one of my players. One of those two's in my side, but the other one could have easily been if he played in a World Cup at the right time. It's something that sort of you don't see as much now, isn't it? But Mascherano, maybe he's our last one of that type.
Yeah, because, you know, since Mascherano left, we were crying out for someone to replace that position in the field, like a defensive midfielder who just breaks up the play, and we got it in Fabinho. But he does it differently. He sort of like nips in and, you know, uses them telescopic legs. So he did do when he was a bit, you know, faster than what he is now. But yeah, I think it's just the Argentine or the South American sort of fire in the belly, and yeah, we seen it the other night. Like, they've all got that little bit of snide in them, especially the Argentinian players. Like, they know when to go down, they know when to hold the face, even though they've been kicked in the back of the elbow. And it's something that, like, you've just got to embrace. I think, like, it's probably really annoying if your team is playing them, but if they're on your team, like, you can never have too much of like a snardy thing. I think, like, that's what wins you trophies. Like, if Argentina go on to win this World Cup, which they've got a very good shot at doing, it'll be because they just know how far they can push things. Like, Mascherano epitomises what you just said. Like, he knows he can take it just to the limit. Like, and the Argentinian players tonight went just that far enough that nobody got sent off, but they took it in turns to all take yellow cards or go down and waste a little bit of time. It's just the dark arts of the South American football that some people love it, some people hate it. I've just got a little bit of liking for it.
And the thing is, it's a bit snobbish, I think, of England fans to sort of talk like England players don't do that. Because England players do that. They just don't do it as well. They're just not quite so convincing. They're just not as, I don't know, it's just not as instinctive maybe, but they do it. And I saw it the other day in England's game that they were doing it. And that's how football is. And that's the thing with any of these things, like whether you like them or not, if football says it's okay to do it, you do it because that's what football says. If it's not right, then football needs to sort of tighten up rules like time wasting. It's kind of done that a bit in this World Cup by adding so much time on at the end. And Liverpool have benefited from that this season when players have wasted time and the refs added time on. And that to me is the answer to time wasting, is stop letting teams profit from it. If you don't stop them from profiting from it, they'll still try. So that's how it is. And so that's one good thing to come out of this World Cup, and hopefully we see more of that time wasting gets eradicated, because I've always hated that. Even when Liverpool used to do it back in the days when you could kick the ball back to your goalkeeper and he could pick it up eventually and bounce it a few times and pass it to his teammate again and pass it back to each other and stuff. And I used to hate it even then, even if that did win us European Cups. I hated seeing it. Nowadays I hate seeing it because when Liverpool do that, they usually make some stupid mistake and let the other team in anyway. So that's just me. So yeah, I mean, I did give it away a little bit there. My sort of most defensive midfielder is Graham Souness. I think he's a player that anyone who watched Liverpool back in those days will tell you about. Was an amazing player. The attitude of him and everything. He was such a fiery character. He's sort of definitely a player who put everything on the line for his team, including things that weren't his, like parts of other people's legs maybe got put on the line. He was just that sort of player. And the thing is, though, that is what he's kind of remembered for. But that sort of aggressive side of his game, if you like, wasn't all there was to him. He was a hell of a skillful player. You know, and despite that fearsome reputation, people who know him in real life say he's quite the gentleman. So yeah, definitely a player I'm proud to have said has played for us. And I know it didn't go well with him as manager for lots of reasons, especially an interview he did. But as a player, he's definitely up there as one of my all-time greats. And he was always going to be in this side. Once I checked, he'd played in a World Cup, because as I've mentioned, Scotland weren't great at World Cups at the time, but he did play when he was playing for us, so he gets in. If I was doing a 4-4-2, his sort of partner, if you like, in the central part of the four-man midfield, is also someone I think would be in my three, and that's someone we've also mentioned, and that's a more recent amazing midfielder, Steven Gerrard. I'm guessing he's in yours as well, is he?
Yes. It goes without saying, I think. In the time I've been watching Liverpool, he's probably the greatest player I've seen for what he's done for Liverpool. There's other players who probably be more technically better, or have done things that you've never seen on a football pitch before, who I might bring up a little bit later on. But just, growing up in Huyton, and Steven Gerrard was from Huyton. He played for Wiston Juniors. I played at Wiston Juniors for a little bit. My uncle managed Wiston Juniors. He basically was the local boy who got to Liverpool, and it gives you that dream, you can do it. And to go on and do what he did in his career, you could speak for hours. But he's a shoo-in any team. I think if you are doing any sort of Liverpool greatest 11, regardless of how you want to do it, what your stipulations are, Steven Gerrard's probably always going to be in there. So he would be, in my team, he would be the third midfielder who could maybe progress up the pitch and be the number 10. That's why I said some of his best times were playing off Fernando Torres in the advanced role. And I suppose that's probably a good moment where I put in my third midfielder, which was Xabi Alonso.
Right. Yeah.
Because some of the things he could do with the football were mesmerising, and again, like Mascherano, we didn't have him for long. So yeah, I think at one time they were the best midfielder in the world, weren't they?
Definitely.
With Mo Sissoko, and the song said it all. But I had honourable mentions for the likes of obviously the current captain Jordan Henderson, and the class of the man that come out and gave the interview the other night. And I'm on record as saying by no means Jordan Henderson's biggest fan, but as a person especially, and the way he speaks and the way he carries himself, he's a credit to himself and his family. And then a couple of honourable others, Jan Molby, of the Anfield Index vintage, John Barnes, who you could use on the wing, or when I seen him play for Liverpool in his latter stage of his career, he was more of a central midfielder. Yeah. And then Steve McManaman, he gets a mention, and Patrick Berger, because back in the 90s with the Alice band and the very baggy football shirts, he done a few things, especially at Old Trafford, that you'll just never forget as a Liverpool fan. So they're my sort of midfield honourable mentions, but I would always just probably go back to Mascherano, Alonso, and Gerrard slightly ahead of them.
Yeah, I remember Paddy Berger joined us just after the Euros. There was actually games played at Anfield, and I'm pretty sure he would have played at Anfield. And they got all the way to the final, didn't they? And that was the Euros where football was coming home for the first time, apparently. I mean, he's still not got home, I think, but never mind. That was way, way, way back now, wasn't it? But yeah, Paddy Berger was sort of... I don't know, there was always something about him that there was felt there was even more to come from him, and it never quite came because he had bits of injuries and things, didn't he? And it was a shame, but he was an absolutely tremendous player on his day. Jan Molby, I was proud to say I got to see him play. He was an amazing player. Another one who doesn't get all the credit he should have. Another one that maybe got missed then is the first ever Liverpool player to play in a World Cup final, I believe, Didi Hamann. I know that people aren't sort of keen on him these days with his comments on social media and things like that, but as a player, he did us a lot of good, and there was nothing as fun as watching Didi Hamann stick his arse out so that someone would foul him and we'd get a free kick that, anyone decent in the team could score from. So, yeah, he was another good Liverpool midfielder. And there's so many more that we maybe haven't mentioned. And if we haven't mentioned them, it's either because they didn't play in the World Cup or because there's so many of them we've forgotten. But my sort of third midfielder, if you like, and this, again, if it was a 4, he'd be playing on the right, Ray Houghton, who was just a tremendous signing for the Liverpool side of the late 80s. Went on to do things with Ireland, pretty sure he was English, but played for Ireland. A way a lot of the Ireland players worked at the time was they found heritage that Jack Charlton found and got them in there. Like another player I've not picked tonight, but could have done, John Aldridge. A Scouse as they come, but played for Ireland because, of course, Liverpool is Ireland anyway, isn't it? So
it's as close to Ireland as it is. It's probably closer to Ireland side than it is to England.
It's more Irish than English, I would say. Most people will say that. And there's loads of players like that we've not spoken about. But yeah, Ray Houghton had this amazing ability at the time. We had Peter Beardsley playing in the side, and I've not even considered him. I don't know whether he played in a World Cup at the right time, but there's so many to pick from up front. But, Houghton could just get a ball in from the right, straight onto Peter Beardsley's head. When Ian Rush was playing, when Aldo was playing, this is the kind of player that we needed. We had a few like that, Terry McDermott and other players down the years. Steve Highway, another winger mentioned, who was actually Irish, so I don't know if he did play in a World Cup at the time. Tony Evans was talking about him recently in his column. There's so many good Liverpool midfielders that it was difficult to just pick three, but I felt with this, I've kind of got almost like three generations, because Souness was a little bit before Houghton, and then we had Gerrard, who was like the more modern era. But yeah, Xabi Alonso was another one I was torn about, because one of the best things about Xabi I remember was, do you remember that game? And he got a kick in the foot, and he stood up and kind of stamped his foot a few times just to see if he could, make it work, and he turned out he'd broken his ankle or something.
Yeah, I remember that one. He was like trying to start an old lawnmower or something, or a motorbike, and he was like, "Yeah, it's fine, it still goes." And,
it's just mad.
This day and age, a player would get a graze on a toenail and be crying and rolling off and wanting to go down the tunnel and all that business. But yeah, he was just some player, and even now, he's doing good things as a manager. He's at Leverkusen. He's done his sort of apprenticeship at Sociedad's B team, and he's gone on to get a job in Leverkusen. And up until the break for the World Cup, he was actually getting Leverkusen going back up the right end of the Bundesliga table. So, he might be one to keep an eye on, because, there was not many better players to watch play football during that period of Liverpool's time, because there was a few not so good players, but watching someone like him grace the pitch was a joy.
Yeah, we were blessed to have him, because when you think about the time with the money and all the rest of it, we ended up selling him because there's no way we could have kept hold of him for the amount of money he would have cost. And another sort of controversy at the time about maybe Gareth Barry being brought in replacement for him, but I think at the time there was already talk that Xabi wanted to leave, and maybe he wanted to leave because the squad wasn't up to his standards and maybe wouldn't do as well as he'd want, and also getting a chance to go and play for the biggest team in your home country. I mean, it's not hard to imagine why he'd have been tempted by all of that. But if we'd had the money at the time, maybe we wouldn't have lost him, and that's a shame, because maybe we didn't get his best years, but we still got some really good years. Yeah,
it's just one of them things that in the current Liverpool team, we would be able to hold on to him, and we have obviously held on to players like him. So yeah, it was just one of them periods we were going through. It was not the nicest, but some things like seeing him on the pitch helped.
Yeah, and
so yeah, that's sort of my guys as a 2-man / 3-man midfield, which you could advance, because what I've now got up top, once you see what's available, you can probably figure out that it can just work in a numerous different ways. But
yeah, I'll just quickly say who I've got on the left wing, because he's kind of gone into my front three, but if I'm doing it as a 4-4-2, he's on my left wing, and you've already mentioned him, but you saw him as a central midfielder, John Barnes. I was lucky enough to see him as a left winger playing for Liverpool at a time when he wasn't the first black player for Liverpool, but he was the first sort of high profile black player, if you like, for Liverpool, and the amount of racist abuse he had to undergo as a player was unreal. His arrival was an education for a lot of Liverpool fans, I'll go as far as saying, because I think people at the time, maybe at Liverpool, there was definitely more racism amongst the fans in those days. You can't deny it, but that kind of stopped it. It really did. It just put the brakes on it and made people realise when it shouldn't have taken that. But the world we were in at the time, it's not surprising it did. But that sort of changed people, I would say, at Anfield, changed their attitude about racism, and it was good to see. I mean, I was quite young at the time and remember seeing that change in attitude, that totally different to what I'd seen maybe a couple of years before when a black player came to play at Anfield, and it was disgusting what went on, and I don't deny that, but it improved, and I think over the years it improved more and more at football grounds. It's still there, as we kind of alluded to with the last time England went out of a tournament on penalties, but away from that, what he did on the pitch was just absolutely amazing. And the thing, and it sounds like it's an echo of Trent Alexander-Arnold, he was not appreciated by England or even by England fans. He used to get booed when he played for England at Wembley. They'd often play him out of position as well. They'd try and stick him up front almost as a sort of second striker, which a player like John Barnes has got the skills to do just about anything anywhere. But why use him in his most natural position? Why play him out of position? And it's just England, isn't it? That's England for you. An amazing player. So he would definitely be in my kind of front three if I was doing a 4-3-3 or on my left wing of a 4-4-2. And he's the front three is on my left. So should we start from the left with your front three?
Yeah, and I'm torn because there's numerous players who you could play out there, but I'm going to play someone out of position on the left wing. So the honourable mentions, obviously Sadio Mane. Everything that he done in the Liverpool shirt, he won the lot, and it was a real shame that he didn't get to play in this World Cup, given obviously his joy of winning the African Cup of Nations earlier on in the year for Senegal. And who knew, maybe Senegal might have caused England a bit more problems had they had Mane in the team. So he unfortunately just misses out. There will be again an honourable mention for Raheem Sterling, but he just didn't do long enough at Liverpool. If you're probably saying Raheem Sterling's career, it's probably more as a Man City player than a Liverpool player, even though we sort of give him his opportunity in the professional game. So I'm going to have to play Uruguay's Luis Suarez out on the left wing, only because I need to fit a couple of other players in. At one point I did have him in the number 9. But yeah, as I said with Gerrard, he was the best player I've seen, do thing for Liverpool over his career. But Luis Suarez, I think, speaks for himself. If you watched him for them, 3 or 4 years that he was at Liverpool, I think it was the 13-14 season or 12-13, can't remember exactly which one it was, when he basically took the league into his own hands and ran riot. I've never seen a player in a Liverpool shirt do things that he's done. Some of the goals he scored. So yeah, he goes in slightly out of position, playing left wing, and it was the Luis Suarez of this World Cup. I don't think he'd be lasting more than 5 minutes, because unfortunately it was kind of probably 3 years past his sort of sell-by date, if you want to put it one way or another, because he does look a bit finished.
Yeah. I've heard a few people say that they've actually used the word sad, as in it's sad to see what's happening.
It is. It's probably a pride thing. He wanted to play for Uruguay in this World Cup, but at times it was a little bit painful as well.
He's the kind of person, though, he'll fight. So he fought for Liverpool. That's where I admired most about him as a player, was not just his skill and everything, but the shit he put up with and all the rest of it. And he just fought for us. And I know there was off-field stuff that kind of made things, kind of sort of tarnish the memory. But on the field, he did everything to play for that red shirt while he was a Liverpool player. And I'm sure it's the same with Uruguay, and he just wants to do everything he can. But sadly, everything he can isn't enough anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think he probably now is going to hang his boots up, because he's done everything really, apart from win a Ballon d'Or, because he was robbed a bit. But he's been around Europe. He's played for some of the best clubs in Europe. He's won all the trophies he can probably want to win or could get his hands on, especially at Barcelona. And then he's gone back to Uruguay and he's played for the club that he started out at, and I think he won a trophy with them as well. And then he's played in this World Cup, so I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few days, weeks, months, or whatever, Luis Suarez is announced as a retired football player, and what a career he's had, really.
Yeah, one that he can be proud of, even if everyone will always talk about the off the field stuff, the biting and other things, but
not the handball in the World Cup.
No, that doesn't get a mention. That's all that we got mentioned when we signed him, wasn't it? Straight. Yeah. Straight.
Yeah.
Away, Liverpool are signing the cheats, and that's what he was up against. And in the end, you're going to sort of live up to it, aren't you? If that's your reputation.
Yeah.
I had a nightmare trying to pick a middle front man, if you like, a focal person, because, yeah, I can think of lots of players who would have played with a front man, if you like, but who was the front man? So did you come up with one? Who did you decide on?
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mag boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Yeah, and because I've put Suarez out to the left, it's because this man, for me, had to be in the team because of what he did in the Liverpool shirt. Was Fernando Torres. So, obviously, you've got numerous number 9s you could probably have chosen. Bobby Firmino might have done a job for Brazil also in this World Cup.
Yeah.
Daniel Sturridge, Robbie Fowler went to World Cups. Michael Owen. Like, you could have... The list goes on. But I think... maybe that's a...
That takes Michael Owen going past on his little moped, I think.
That was Michael Owen before his hamstrings went. Given the fact I was sort of going with a formation that played Gerrard sort of advanced, his best football at times came off Fernando Torres, so that's why I sort of went with that decision, because at times, like, Fernando Torres done things, again, like Suarez in the Liverpool shirt, that was unthinkable at the time, and I think it'd live long in the memory as well as Spanish fans, that I think it was the Euros he scored that chip goal that won them the Euros, but he did play heavily in the World Cup squads as well. So, yeah, that was the number 9 for me, amongst a list of probably about 14. I don't know, I went down to about 4 or 5 and then pick one and shun Luis out to the left wing.
Yeah, that's it. I went for Torres as well in the end, and it was a difficult decision because in the end I didn't pick a player who would always be my first pick on my team of LFC teams of history, and that's Kenny Dalglish. But in the end I decided, where can I play him? So I cheated, and Kenny's my manager. So there you are, Kenny. Sorry, I couldn't fit you in the team because there's so many good players. That's not because you're not good enough. It's just that having you as a manager is even better. And if we need anyone as a sub later on, you can always take your boots with you like you did towards the end of your playing time with the Reds. So I went with Torres as well as my middle one. And I think it's that same thing. There's something about him as a player as well. It's a shame. Another one, it's a shame he left and the circumstances he left in. I mean, that advert where the Liverpool had gone Spanish because everyone loved him so much. I've never known a fan base, a male section of a fan base, fall so heavily in love with the player as Liverpool fans fell in love with Fernando Torres. But there was just everything about him that everyone just loved. He's another player who fought for the shirt. He was, he stayed on his feet a lot. He didn't sort of dive around, and he had a hell of a shot on him. He great in the air. He was just an all-round great player, and it was the kind of player that made us feel like we were going somewhere, because we'd signed a player that every other Premier League club would have died for. And I would say in the Premier League era, certainly the first 20 odd years of it, maybe we didn't have many players like that, and he was definitely one of them. He was an amazing player, so he got the nod. I mean, the other reason he got it over Kenny is Kenny isn't really a number 9, and so it was hard to fit him in. So sorry, Ken.
But also,
another Anfield Index
he was
person.
that good. He got an advert made after him.
Exactly, that was it. That whole advert was amazing. If you can remember it, You'll remember it well. If not, have a look for it. Was it actually an Adidas advert?
Nike.
God, sorry, wrong brand. Couldn't remember.
Yeah, it was like I seen a tweet not too long ago. It was like long sleeve red shirt, hairband, Nike football boots. You knew you were in trouble when Fernando Torres appeared on the football pitch like this. Yeah, and it was like it was it was iconic. But yeah, if nobody has seen, if you've not seen that advert, just search Fernando Torres Liverpool Nike advert, and I'm sure it'll come up, and it might ignite some fond memories in your mind of a little song in the background too.
Yeah, it was amazing. And they were happy times. I think he's another one of the players that maybe peppered through both our sides that were sort of amazing individuals, and you think if only they'd had a few more amazing teammates around him, it would have been an amazing team, and it just didn't quite. I'm thinking of Steven Gerrard as an example. He was like the best player in our team for years, but at times you felt he could have done with a couple more almost on his level, and we got that with Torres. His link up with Torres when he was playing out on the right and Torres was up front, that was an amazing bit of football as well for us, wasn't it? But that leads us then to the last position. I reckon we're both going to come up with the same player for this one. So front three on the right, who've you gone for?
Not Dirk Kuyt, or Kite, however you want to say it, and not Maxi Rodriguez, who were the two I did pick out as honourable mentions. But some fella called Mohamed Salah. I went for him.
I've got him as well. What a coincidence. Who'd have thought that we'd have both gone for him?
Apparently he's all right.
He isn't bad, is he? Another player who maybe hasn't played as much World Cup football as he should because of who he plays for, and that's with all due respect and all the rest of it. But he's the kind of player, he's a unique player almost in how good he is for his country and how far ahead he is of his teammates, if you like. That, so you talk about Messi being a great player, but if Messi didn't play in the World Cup, Argentina would still do okay, wouldn't they? And you can say that about most of the big name players that play for the country, that if they were missing, they wouldn't have been as good, but they probably still would have done okay. But I'm not sure you can say that with Mo's side, Mo's country, Egypt. I'm not sure they've got a player anywhere close to him. Maybe I'm biased.
Yeah, and I think, if I remember rightly, he went to the World Cup in Russia in 2018.
Yeah.
And he literally just about got there because he was injured towards the end of the season for us.
I think I read that he got Egypt's first goal in, I don't know, decades.
In years.
In the World Cup.
Yeah. And he just missed out, obviously, it was a Senegal he played in the playoff. It was Salah versus Mane part 2 because it was also the African Cup of Nations final early on in the year. And Mane come out on top twice. But he was still our player then, so it was all fine. But yeah, I think he's then a victim of the country he plays for. But, it maybe will not be in Mo's time, but looking along that continent and obviously to the current day World Cup in Morocco, who, there's a couple of players there who you're familiar with who play in high profile teams around the world. But there's a lot of players who, if we're all wholeheartedly honest, we've never heard of before, and it probably gives the whole nation of Africa hope that it's possible for them to get to these latter stages. And it is only a formality; it's a matter of time, I think, before an African nation does win the World Cup. But
yeah, there's more teams in the next World Cup as well that gives them more chances as well. Instead of them being knocked out before we can get there.
Like, a lot of players now are going back to play for countries because, if you look at like France, for example, they've got an absolute wealth of talent who've got a lot of African heritage, and are now the players are thinking, well, I'm going to play for me team of my parents' ancestry, or whether you were born in that country and then you've moved to a different European country at a young age. But it is good to see that players going back. But it's refreshing to see a different team at the latter stages of the World Cup. And yeah, given the football in that part of the world, like we've seen with Salah, he's global icon, but he's a god in the Middle East, in the Arab world, and in North Africa. It's obviously an unfortunate situation. The country he plays for isn't as strong now, but maybe in 10, 15 years' time, that the influence of Mohamed Salah might just spark a generation of Egyptian footballers that actually are good enough.
Yeah, definitely, and that's it. It's I think about, I mean, this is going to be up to my next question, actually, just, is a role model, is a genuine role model. And that's the thing that I think footballers have got to be, they've got to try to be role models. And whether that's being role models by just being great at what they do and giving kids something to dream about, like the dreams you had with Steven Gerrard as a local lad doing well, you know, that kind of thing, that kind of dream. But also a role model in terms of like how to live your life and how to do things, how to react to defeat and things like that, which kind of, it brings me on to my next question, really. I can look at my 11 and think there's a few people here who would quite happily wear the armband and probably have worn the armband for Liverpool and maybe the countries as well down the years, but you're only allowed one captain. So who would you have as your captain? Who would you be sending out in the unlikely event that your side went out of the quarterfinals, you know, and your captain had to go on TV?
As my captain on the pitch, or as my captain to do the interview? Well,
either. You know, I mean, who was the armband for your team?
I'd probably just sway towards Gerrard just because of the captain performances that he put in, and that's no slight on players throughout my team who have worn armbands for the countries before. Like you look at the likes of mentioned Mane and Suarez and Salah and then Van Dijk. You know, the list goes on. But I think just that armband sort of gave him like a cloak of invincibility that made him even more determined. And he never ever produced that much, really. Or he did in occasions in an England shirt, but obviously it always meant more to him to do it in a Liverpool shirt. And I think he would be honest enough as well if it didn't go right to just come out and just say it. And okay, his managerial career hasn't really gone to plan in the last few months and he's now out of a job, but he was not one to shy away from the camera and say like, well, we didn't play good enough, or we didn't deserve this and we didn't deserve that, or we did deserve this and we did deserve that. I think that's just the type of person he is because of where he's from. And we're not backwards in coming forwards, is the saying about Scousers. Like, we will just say what's on our mind, and sometimes it doesn't really sit well with people, but I think that's just because of, you know, the local aspect for me is, as I say, that the dreams were there. He represented what many thousands and millions of kids all around the city and whatever wanted to be. They wanted to be Steven Gerrard. They wanted to be Liverpool captain, and it's going that way with Trent now. Like he's the local beacon of light in terms of he's revolutionising football in a right back position, but I think he'd be the man for me who'd done it. Yeah,
I know what you mean, because he's definitely he took the armband at Anfield at a young age. He took it off Sami Hyypiä, and he was a mature captain from a young age. Basically, he wasn't. I mean, I think the reason given why Sammy had the captaincy taken off him at the time was that, you know, he lets him focus more on his defending instead of having to focus on being a defender. But I think it was just one of those things. It was only a matter of time before Stephen got the captaincy, and he might as well get it over and done with. And Liverpool haven't had loads of sort of full-time captains since, have they? Basically, we've had Henderson took over, and that's all we've had since. And, you know, a different type of captain, and he's not even in either our 11s at the moment, although he is on my bench and your bench, I'm sure. I think I would have gone for Souness as my captain for one reason, and that is because the captain usually gets away with a little bit more before he gets a yellow card. For some reason in football, your captain can just about get away with a little bit more of a foul because of the captain. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that can sometimes happen. And I reckon Souness would be definitely booked before the end of any game that he was playing. On my bench, I just want to correct something as well. I think earlier on I said Didi was the first Liverpool player to play in a World Cup final. He wasn't. I think he was the first either non-English or non-British player, because the first Liverpool player to play in a World Cup final was John Oldo's hero, Roger Hunt, who was in the 1966 World Cup final that England won. You might have heard about that. He didn't score, but, you know, he was a key part of that team. And the likes of Ian Callaghan is on my bench. He was in the England side at the time. I'm not sure if he played in the World Cup, but he was certainly in and around the team. Players we've already mentioned. I'll just read some out that I've got here. Mane, Molby, Didi, Chabi, Phil Thompson, Phil Neal, Michael Owen. Well, Torres was on my bench, but he's been moved as we were talking, actually. Mascherano, Henderson, Bobby, Aldo. And then I think the trouble with my subs bench is I couldn't find a sub keeper who'd actually played a game. So It's either going to be Pepe Reina or Ray Clements as my sub-keeper, but neither of them actually, as far as I'm aware, played a game in a World Cup. But, I'll go with Pepe Reina. Any subs I've missed or that you might have thrown in?
No, I think I went through all my sort of narrowed down list in terms of comparisons of players. But yeah, I think you'd just take Reina along just for the banter and keeping squad morale up. And
yeah, the Spanish crack. He's just
he's just a bit nuts. But I think from what we've combined across the two teams, it would make for a compelling team, and I think one that's probably balanced, I reckon, on both aspects, because it would be very easy to go up with a midfield of 2 or 3 full-on attacking midfielders, raiding full-backs, and basically just leave the back door to Virgil. And there's nothing that he can't handle, but I think we've got a balanced sort of level squad, and that seems to be what would win you the World Cup in the current game as well. Like you can't just have all-out attack, or you rely on one global superstar, which may be the case in Argentina. But you look at the teams that are currently in this World Cup semi-final, like Croatia, for example, just lack a forward, but whatever they've got on the rest of the pitch is so balanced that it's got them so far. And then you compare that to teams, maybe like Portugal, who are relying on one guy, rightly or wrongly, and maybe they don't rely on him so much anymore. But it was a complete dysfunctional sort of setup. And the same with Belgium. There's no sort of team effort. There's no balance across the team, and you very quickly found out in international football, unfortunately, at that level, if you're not a team, it just proves it. As again, Morocco as well. They're a team, but they've got there based on the balance of what they are, not a superstar or going hell for level with 5-6 attacking players on the pitch.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think if we'd have been handed a list of Liverpool players who've ever played in a World Cup and said, pick the 11 best players, not a team, just 11 best players, then it wouldn't have been balanced at all. We've had to make some difficult decisions in some of these positions. Okay, left back, there wasn't loads of competition, but even that, now that I know you've got Carragher at left back, I'm thinking, is Steve Nicol still edging that? And there's something about having Carragher in a team when he was like at his best, and in terms of his fight and his attitude and his leadership, and that voice of his, I mean, that voice that used to be quite a squeaky voice in his younger days that you couldn't miss over the sound of everyone around field as he's sort of like barking out instructions. And it's having personalities, isn't it, is important as well. We've got a lot of personalities in here, and I think they'd all get on really well. That's the other thing. I mean, Liverpool have done well when the team's been a team, when it's played as a team, and I could see these lads getting on all right. I mean, Graham Souness might take a bit of getting used to for some of them, but you know what? They'd get used to him. They'd respect him. They'd take the piss a bit now and again, and he'd take the piss back. So, he'd be good.
They'd be turned up in his budgie smugglers and oiled up with his bronze tan. I don't think you are going to actually argue with Graham.
Exactly.
That famous picture that goes around of him.
Yeah, I think I would have. I mean, I looked and it was a really quick look, and I don't think Robbie was playing for us when he played in the World Cup for England. I know he was playing for us when he played in the Euros, but I don't think Robbie was playing in the World Cup for us. So I couldn't have him in, and I think that's kind of how I kind of went about doing my team early on. Is I picked some of the people I thought were the best players ever. Did he play in a World Cup for us? Did he play in a World Cup when he was a Liverpool player? And I looked, and I don't think Robbie was. I think he'd moved on by that point. But again, Robbie was another one of those players who was criminally underused by England. Alan Shearer and Teddy Sheringham were getting the nod before Robbie, and Robbie was banging goals in left, right and centre for England. It didn't make a lot of sense. Michael Owen as well, another player that, I know we kind of fell out with him since for different reasons. I mean, wearing a Man United top does that to you, but he was a hell of a player for us, and it was just so much competition, but you can't argue with those, I don't think. But if you've enjoyed what we've done today, I hope you have. We'll try and do other things like this now and again, because it's good to just talk about other stuff than what's going on at the moment. I mean, at the moment, what's going on is Liverpool are playing friendlies where at the end of the game you do a penalty shootout for an extra point, which is such a bizarre idea that it's bound to be part of Premier League football next season, but hopefully not. But if you have enjoyed it, please sort of encourage us, come up with ideas yourself if you like, if there's something you'd like us to do. I always like the fact that I've got these older players that I can remember, and Jay's got much more of an insight on the younger players and the more recent players, and we see things our way, but we kind of still agree despite the difference in our sort of eras of what we really grew up watching. So, we agree we've had some hell of some players down the year. So if there's another sort of theme we can do, we'll do one. And if you've got your own ideas, why not drop some things in the Discord? Put your own little justifications in as well of who we've got right, who we've got wrong. We can take it. It's all a bit of fun, isn't it? And if you're one of the players that we've left out, I'm sorry, but it was an accident. We didn't mean it, and we'll definitely put you in next time. But for now, thanks to Jay for the idea. Thanks to Jay for being here. Thanks to you for listening, and we'll catch you again soon. That's all for now.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.